All right. So good morning, everyone. Dr. Michael Breus, this is our bi-weekly project managers meeting of the UCLA Health IT. So we have all the project managers from our group, and every month we have a theme education series, guest speaker series. And usually I introduce you, and then we'll turn it over to Ian to moderate into a fire chat type session. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Which was just a brief introduction on what the topic is and a little background on Dr. Breus. Dr. Michael Breus will be talking today on the diaries of a sleep doctor and on achieving maximum productivity through optimal sleep. And as you know, as IT colleagues and project managers, and in general, we all need help with optimal sleep, and the quantity of sleep and the quality of sleep that we have may not be optimal. So this is a very good topic to end the year. This is our last meeting for the year. Dr. Breus is a double board certified clinical psychologist and a clinical sleep specialist. He's one of the few folks, psychologists who have taken and passed the sleep medicine boards without even going to the medical school. He is also the founder of the Sleep Doctor. Let me admit some folks who are joining. Dr. Breus has authored 4 books, and his newest books was in 2021, which is Energize, Go from Dragging Ass to Kicking It in 30 Days. It talks about the concepts of movement, not necessarily exercise, and intermittent fasting, and also to his famous sleep chronotypes, which we'll talk about today. And in it was named as one of the top books, and also in his third book, The Power of When, he talks about a groundbreaking biohacking method on the perfect time to do what we need to do in a given day or in a given week. So he'll talk a little bit about that based on our biological chronotype, whether we are an early bird or a night owl. So we'll get into that. And he's an expert resource, and he has done over 400 interviews per year. That's amazing. So in his 23 years experience in private practice, and he recently relocated to Los Angeles, and he has been named as the top sleep doctor of Los Angeles by the Reader's Digest. And with that, I welcome Dr. Michael Breus, and turn it over to Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Sankar. I think Dr. Breus has a few slides to share with us just to prime the pump, and then we can go into our usual fireside chat. So,
yeah,
feel free to.
I'm going to share my screen.
Perfect.
And I'm just rolling through the slides real quick to see which ones we're going to work on here. So, yeah, okay, perfect. I'm going to unhide a slide or two to explain chronotypes just a little bit better. So let me just unhide that.
So perfect question, Dr. Breus, while you're looking that up. With 400 interviews a year, when do you find time to sleep?
So that is the right question. I get that question more often than you might imagine. I sleep great. I really do prioritize sleep for me. And it's not that bad. I mean, honestly, it's about an interview a day. Unfortunately, that does include the weekends. So it's usually some days I've got 3 or 4 interviews. Some days I've only got 1 or 2. But at the end of the year, north of 300 times, I'm usually talking to somebody about sleep. So it is kind of crazy. But a lot of people want to know kind of like, what is sleep? How does it work? And so what I thought I would do is give some basics behind the science of sleep. And then I'm going to give people some ideas of what happens in a sleep doctor's office who is primarily working with clients for performance sleep metrics. So how do we get people to perform better, managers to perform better, workers to perform better, things like that, and how do we do it with sleep? Is that okay?
Sounds good. Fire away.
All right. So sleep is really based on 2 separate systems in the brain. One is called sleep drive. The other is called sleep rhythm. And so when we think about these, we can think them very similar to the way we think about hunger, right? So hunger, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. I eat something and that hunger begins to dissipate. The same holds true with sleep. When a cell eats a piece of glucose, something comes out the back end. One of those things is called adenosine. Adenosine works its way through the system and goes to a very specific receptor site in your brain. As adenosine accumulates, you get sleepier and sleepier and sleepier, okay? But that's not the only thing. The other one is your rhythm. So what is that? I'm talking about your circadian rhythm. So also somewhat similar to hunger. You ever notice you're hungry around breakfast time, around lunchtime, and around dinner time, right? That is your circadian rhythm for hunger. Most people, at least here in the United States, have a tendency to get tired somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. That's their circadian rhythm. And so if your drive is high and your rhythm is in sync, you sleep. But if either one of these is off, you end up with a sleep disorder. So people are like, well, I don't really understand what's an example of a time when it's off. So let me give everybody an example. So let's say that you were out during the daytime and you did a lot of physical activity. You're working in the garden, you went for a hike, walk with grandchildren, whatever, right? And you've got a lot of physical activity and you're physically tired. And your normal bedtime is around 10, 10:30, but you're like, you know what? Everybody's gone. I'm getting in bed at 8 o'clock because I want to get that extra sleep, okay? So your drive is very, very high, but you're entering sleep at the wrong time for your rhythm. Well, what happens? You go to bed, you fall asleep for 30 minutes, you wake up, then you're wide awake and you're certainly not falling asleep for the rest of the night. Or you lie there completely exhausted and can't fall asleep, but know that your body is physically tired, right? Those are the two things that happen. And that's an instance where we see this rhythm and drive is not, kind of working in lockstep with each other. Now, once we understand the two main kind of sources behind sleep, or the two systems behind sleep, it's good to kind of break it down into its components. And we call that sleep architecture. And there are a lot of stages of sleep. There are stages 1, 2, 3 is now a combination of 3 and 4 and stage REM. But what you really need to know about is stage 3, 4, and REM. So here on what we call a hypnogram, you'll notice this little graphic to the left is orange is wake, then you go into light sleep for a little while, then you make it into deep sleep, which is stage 3 and 4, then back to light sleep, and then on into light blue, which is REM. That is considered a sleep cycle, and that sleep cycle takes roughly 80 to 120 minutes, on average 90 minutes. But you'll notice that deep sleep is front loaded on the front end of the night here on this graph. So what you see here is in the front of the night is when you get your stage 3, 4, and across the night is when you get your light blue REM. Why does that make a difference? It makes a difference because different things happen during each stage. So stages 3 and 4, which again is combined together, should make up roughly 23% of your night. That's the physical restoration, wake up and feel great sleep. Okay, and so that's really kind of like bringing the car into the body shop and getting the dents and the dinks and the scratches kind of pulled out each night. It is not the mental restoration. That comes with REM sleep. Another thing that happens in deep sleep is the waste management system of the brain, called the glymphatic system, comes in and it scoops out all of these excess proteins that your brain makes during the daytime. If there's too many proteins in the brain, they strangle the nerves. That's called Alzheimer's disease. We want to avoid that. So sleep, specifically stages 3 and 4 sleep, where this glymphatic system kicks into gear greater than any other time in your 24-hour cycle, is critically, critically important. So as we get older and this stage of sleep begins to weaken, we have to be very careful about not doing things to make it worse. REM sleep is somewhat similar. However, it's a completely different stage of sleep and does something completely different in that it does have 25% of your sleep should be roughly REM sleep. That's going to change as we age, but this is your mental restoration. Excuse me. This is where we move information from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. Our muscles become so relaxed that we become paralyzed. And again, this has a tendency to happen more towards the back half of the night. So if you're one of these people who naturally would like to sleep until, let's say, 8 or 9 o'clock, and you're getting up at 6 a.m., you're knocking out the last bit of REM sleep, which is the largest amount for your mental restoration. So by not following your what's called chronotype, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, you end up shorting yourself on the important sleep that you're getting. But these are the stages. This is kind of how it works, and this is the type of stuff that you're looking for, that you kind of want to get. So one question people always ask is like, well, Michael, why do we even need sleep? Okay. And so sleep affects every organ system in every disease state. We don't exactly know why we sleep. A guy by the name of Matthew Walker wrote a book called Why We Sleep. He never really answered the question, by the way. But we do know what happens when we don't sleep, right? When we don't sleep, we have all kinds of brain problems. So irritability, memory lapse, poor judgment, lack of focus. For our gut, we see impaired immune function. For our heart, we see, actually, that should say decreased heart rate variability, not increased. We do see increased risk of heart and stroke. And then in our muscles, we see increased reaction time. So we're slower. We see decreased accuracy. We see more tremors. So honestly, any single thing you do better with a good night's sleep. That's just kind of how it is. Now we're talking about both quantity and quality, but just to kind of double tap on quantity for a second, it's all based on age. So where you are in your aging cycle tells us about the range of sleep that we think that you need to get. And this is all done with epidemiologic research, but on average, we're looking for adults are kind of looking for somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of reasonable sleep a night. Me personally, I get about 6:45 to 7. Maybe 6.5. I'm 55 years old and I have great levels of energy throughout the daytime. So I think there's some variability in that 7 to 9 number for sure. Now, a lot of people want to know, okay, well, we understand that we need to get, stage 3, 4. We understand we need to get REM. Maybe we need between 7 and 9 hours, but what causes sleep problems, right? And so there are things called sleep disorders, right? So something called sleep apnea, where you stop breathing in your sleep, something called narcolepsy, which basically gives you really crappy sleep at night, which then gives you better sleep during the day, restless legs and periodic limb movements, insomnia, sleepwalking. These are formal sleep disorders, right? There's also something out there that I call disordered sleep, right? That is, I went to that room in the back of the house. I slept for maybe, 7 hours, and I came out and I don't feel so good. As a matter of fact, I feel like crap, Michael, and I don't know why. That's disordered sleep. So that has more to do with sleep quality, daytime fatigue, restlessness, pain, but primarily not sleeping within your chronotype. And so chronotypes are these things based on our sleep-wake cycles. And so this is a plot across several days looking at 2 particular hormones. One is called cortisol, the other is called melatonin. Cortisol is the hormone that your brain creates during fight or flight. So when you've got to be up, awake, and going. So you notice when the sunshine hits, boom, you've got your highest level of cortisol, and it kind of goes down, down, down throughout the day. And then when nighttime hits, cortisol is at its lowest level, but melatonin takes a rise and starts moving in that direction. And so this is exactly how the sleep-wake cycle works, is cortisol is up when melatonin is down, and melatonin is up when cortisol is down. If these get flip-flopped, you have insomnia. A lot of people are not managing their cortisol well because of stress. And so what happens with a lot of people is that this cortisol doesn't go down, but because they live such stressful lives and have so much stress in their lives, their cortisol stays up while their melatonin is trying to stay up. And those two cancel each other out, and then you just don't get good sleep. Now, I've mentioned the word chronotype, but I want to explain to you what it is and what the different types are. So your chronotype is actually your genetic predisposition for sleep, or what I call your swim lane for sleep. Now, you've heard of chronotypes before, but you haven't heard the term. But if you've ever been called an early bird or a night owl, those are chronotypes. So I renamed the categorical system because I'm a mammal, not a bird. And I added one because I found another genetic chronotype. And I want to be very clear. These are in your genes. If you send me your 23andMe data or your Ancestry.com data, I can show you what your chronotype is, exactly what your sleep zone is. And then if you sleep within that zone, your sleep is more efficient. You fall asleep more quickly. You get to REM faster. You get to deep sleep faster. So everything becomes more efficient if you're sleeping within your chronotypical zone. Once again, this is genetic. You don't get to pick. Okay. And so a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to force myself to wake up at 5 a.m. and become an early bird. Good frickin' luck, all right? Because here's what happens is you wake up, you feel like crap, you do it for 4 or 5 days, and then you're like, screw this, I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. I'm going back to my old, because your body is not actually meant to be awake at that period of time. I talked with a guy who wrote this book called The 5 a.m. Club. He was a former monk. His name is Robin Sharma. And I said, Robin, you know,
Robin, yeah.
yeah, I was like, Robin, roughly 20% of the world can do what you're saying, but the other 80%, biologically speaking, cannot wake up at 5 a.m. and have a good day. And I really had to emphasize the science with him, also with a good friend of mine, Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning, where he talks about waking up early and all the things that you do in the morning. Now, if you're a morning person, like if you're an early bird, then this is the best. I call them lions because, let's be fair, who wouldn't want to be king or queen of the jungle? But these are my very early morning oriented people. They're my go-getters, my leaders, usually the COO of a company, not the CEO. They're not usually the visionary. They're usually the person that wakes up first and gets all the list done for the day. They like to actually have a list. So they like to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. They're good managers, planners, things like that. But it's not always great to be a lion. Dinner and a movie is out for a lion, okay? Because they've been up since 4:30 in the morning. Like there's no way they're making it up to see a movie. So there's pros and cons to each one of these chronotypes, right? Bears are in the middle. Now, we used to call them hummingbirds. I have no idea why we call them hummingbirds. It seems pretty stupid to me, to be honest with you. But I like bears because, number one, teddy bears, they're big, fun creatures. There's something that they're affable that people can kind of get used to. Bears make up 55% of the population. 1 in 2 people is a bear. Now, what does that mean? These are people who like to go to bed around 10:30, wake up around 7:30. They have a very healthy sleep drive. They're kind of the glue for society because they make up so much of society. Believe it or not, the 9 to 5 schedule is perfect for a bear because it just works right in with their overall schedule. Most of society is really built around this bear schedule. The next is the night owl, what I'm calling a wolf. Now, historically, I have been a night owl since I've been about 13 years old. And I'm going to discuss this in a second, but wolves make up 15 to 20% of the population. These are my CEOs. These are my visionaries, my late night creatives, my artists, my actors, my authors. These are out of the box thinkers. They crave novelty. They're big risk takers, good friends, and good overall people for sure. So far, I haven't told you anything that you don't already know. You knew about early birds, you knew about night owls, and you figured there's got to be somebody in between. This is kind of what I'm most known for, is this chronotype called the dolphin. And so I chose dolphins because dolphins sleep unihemispherically. So half of their brain is asleep while the other half is awake and looking for predators. And I felt like that represented my insomniacs, these people with erratic sleep schedules. They have a short sleep drive, but they crave longer bouts of sleep. Highly intelligent. They tend to be a little on the OCD side, very fast talking, well-read, fun people, but definitely on the anxious side of things, and definitely one of these people that's got a very irregular sleep schedule. So what you got to do is decide, do I have a sleep disorder or do I have disordered sleep? Because in all likelihood, you probably got one or the other. Now, I want to be fair. Not everybody's a bad sleeper. Like there are people out there who sleep really well. You can probably improve your sleep, but here's a couple things to think about when to see a doctor about your sleep. So if you have disrupted breathing for up to a minute at a time, like if your bed partner says, holy crap, you stopped breathing and I wasn't sure you were going to start. If they say they even see it one time, you need a sleep study. Excessive daytime sleepiness, morning headaches, irritability, you can read. It's all very similar here. But here's what's interesting is if you look on the right side of the screen, these are all the medical conditions that are actually linked to sleep disorders. So if you have undiagnosed sleep apnea, narcolepsy, or restless legs, look at all of the things that are linked to that. Heart failure, heart disease, obesity, diabetes, snoring, high blood pressure, stroke. It's literally a litany of the most popular diseases and medical conditions out there. If I put percentages of the US population that had these, your jaw would drop. And here's the crazy part. When you fix sleep, about half of these go away. Now, sleep, I've talked a little bit about sleep apnea, so I did want to do a quick highlight on what that is and how that works. And then we're going to get into how I work with clients. So sleep apnea is repetitive inspiratory blockages of the upper airway. All right, that sounds really technical. You know what it is? It's when you stop breathing at night and your partner basically hits you with their elbow and says, "Holy crap, I thought you were dead." Okay, that's obstructive sleep apnea. And that happens hundreds of times a night. And that's usually from a blockage, like a physical blockage, like tonsils or adenoids or things like that. There is a second type of apnea called central sleep apnea, and that's where your brain tells your lungs don't breathe. That's much more complicated, very difficult to deal with from a treatment perspective. There are lots of treatment options for sleep apnea. Now, to be fair, the most popular one and the one that works the best is something called a CPAP machine, but don't be afraid of it. Don't say I'm not going to get diagnosed because I don't want to wear a mask while I sleep. There are many, many other treatments. It's just that CPAP happens to work the best. There are mouth guards that dentists can create for you. There's weight loss, there's surgeries. There's a whole host of different things that can kind of happen. The other big thing I see is insomnia. And so these are the complaints that I get is, I can't turn off my brain. I fall asleep fine, but I wake up and can't go back to sleep. I'm exhausted, but not tired. Again, these are the things that put you into the sleep disorder. You need to talk to a specialist kind of standpoint. What I do with my insomniacs is I have a very programmatic, systematized approach, and we have them keep what's called a sleep diary. So they're writing down every morning, how did they sleep? And by the way, I like that better than using a tracker or something like that. But most of my patients, I'll have them on the Oura Ring as a secondary backup to their sleep diary, because they're filling out the sleep diary and then I double check it against the Oura Ring. Because what a lot of patients like to do is they don't fill out the diary, and then right before the appointment with me, they scribble in all these things and they try to remember what it looked like. Okay. And I catch them because if it doesn't match up pretty close with the Oura Ring, which is pretty accurate, I kind of have an understanding of sort of what's going on with them. And then I go through a scheduled bedtime based on their chronotype. I give them an electronic curfew. So I say, look, I want all electronics off by this time. We do a supplement review. And then I give them a pre-bed routine that helps them wind down before bed. If you were looking without having to go to a doctor about what are the top kind of things to do for your sleep in general, this is kind of where we would want to go. And so if I had to pick things, this is the slide that you would want. And by the way, this is being recorded, so you can watch it again, and Ian will get my slides and all that kind of fun stuff. But here's the thing is, if I had to pick one on this wheel, it's that one with the watch, and it's go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day. And I'd even make a caveat to that and say it's only the wake up time that I really care about. So if you wake up at 6:30 during the week, I want you waking up at 6:30 on Saturday and 6:30 on Sunday. Now, you're groaning in the back of your mind and you're like, oh, I knew he was going to say that, and it sucks. And I don't want to wake up at 6:30 on Saturday morning, and I don't want to wake up at 6:30 on Sunday morning. Why should I do that? Let me explain the science to you behind this one tip, and then we're going to continue forward. When you wake up in the morning, sunlight hits your eyeball, and there's a special cell in your eye called a melanopsin cell. This sends a signal back to your pituitary gland to stop producing melatonin. Okay, actually pineal gland, not pituitary gland. And so not only does it tell your melatonin to shut off, but it sets a timer for 14 hours later to start melatonin production again. So if it goes off at 6, it turns back on at 8. Okay. Now, if you're normally waking up at 6 and now you wake up at 8, guess what? Your melatonin doesn't turn back on until 10, which means your body is not going to be able to start feeling sleepy until almost 12, because it takes about 90 minutes for melatonin to reach plasma concentration levels and about 20 minutes for somebody to fall asleep. So by not waking up at the same time, you have now set your melatonin production for a later period of time merely by sleeping in. That should be enough of an interest for you to say, hey, if I naturally have a substance in me, a hormone that helps me fall asleep, I want that to be as regular as humanly possible. And this is how you do it, is literally by making sure that you have the right wake-up time. Now, the question is, what is your right wake-up time? And you can base it based on your chronotype. So if you go to chronoquiz.com and take the quiz, you will be right there, and you'll be able to learn everything you ever wanted to know about your chronotype, about life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, you name it. It's in there if you go to ChronoQuiz. No, I'm just kidding. It's all about sleep. And you will learn the best time of day to go to bed and wake up. I teach you the best time of day for coffee, for alcohol, even for intimacy. So there's
Dr. Breus, it was, I'm trying to put it in the chat. It's Chrono
quiz. I'll put it in there.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
chronoquiz.com. So
Perfect.
So what I do in my office is when somebody approaches me and says, I want to improve my sleep from a performance standpoint, or I think I got crappy sleep, very first thing we do is a pretty big assessment, right? So I go through about an hour's worth of questions where I'm really learning everything I can. Then I start you on a handwritten sleep diary for 1 week because I got to get weekday and weekend information so I can have some data with which to work. Once I have those two pieces of information, the next move is I have you go to your physician and I have you do blood work. And I'm looking at 4 specific things. I'm looking for vitamin D. I'm looking for iron. I'm looking for, what am I looking for? Magnesium, and I'm looking for melatonin. Those are the 4. If you have deficiencies in any one of those 4 things, you're not sleeping well, I can assure you. And we need to fix that deficiency before we do anything, before we do the scheduling, before we do the everything. It's you have a bodily deficiency that we need to fix. Now, lots of people will turn to me and say, well, how much magnesium should I take? My first question is how do you know if you're deficient? Like, have you done the blood work yet? So just taking something for no reason is a really stupid idea, right? So figure out what's going on in your body and let's get your body up to the right levels to see. Okay, we've done the blood work and it turns out you don't have any magnesium deficiencies or anything like that, but you do have a hard time either falling asleep or staying asleep. Then I have a very particular protocol I would put you on based on your chronotype. So those are kind of the steps that we have to take. And then I might recommend supplement. I might recommend different planning. I also create pre-bed routines for people, so ways to help them reduce their stress before bed, and then morning routines for them to be able to, keep their energy. And then, of course, I do jet lag management for all of my patients who travel. And most of my patients are like I work with Paris Hilton, and she does a DJ event in one place, and then she's literally in another country within 36 hours, and I have to have her on stage and performing. So it's, it can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. But with that, I thought I would open it up for questions. And hopefully I've stimulated people enough so that they have some questions. And let's go.
All right. Thanks so much, Dr. Breus. I'll start off. Have a question. Where do you stand on caffeine?
Yes.
There's an entire camp against it, entire camp for it, and then there's Starbucks in between.
Right, absolutely. So here's my ideas on caffeine. So caffeine has no nutritional value whatsoever. There's no need for it in somebody's diet. This is completely an addition or supplement to whatever it is you're doing. So that's number 1. Number 2, I like caffeine. I don't have a problem with caffeine, but caffeine might have a problem with your sleep. So you have to really understand what caffeine is and how it works. So caffeine actually will break the bond that adenosine, that thing that makes you feel sleepy in your head, have. And it can last for a long time. The half-life of caffeine is between 6 and 8 hours. So if you have a cup of coffee, let's say you've had 3 cups of coffee for the day and your last cup of coffee was at 2 p.m., then at 10 p.m., I would say somewhere between 3/4 and a cup and a half of coffee is still wandering around in your brain at 10 o'clock at night. So that gives you an understanding. So if you come to me and you say, I'm an insomniac, or I have a hard time staying asleep, or I have a hard time falling asleep, but by the way, Dr. Breus, I can't give up my coffee, I'm really not interested in seeing you. Because you know what I'm saying? Because you're doing exactly the thing that I know is having an effect. Now, it might not be the only thing that's having an effect, but if I can whittle you down to 1 caffeinated beverage a day, make it 90 minutes after you wake up so that you hydrate and make it stop by probably 10 o'clock in the morning, I don't have a problem with caffeine. So 1 caffeinated beverage somewhere between, 8 and 10 a.m. is probably just fine. But, be forewarned, if you do the other stuff, it's going to mess you up.
Awesome. And before we go to the next question, you mentioned before that don't drink coffee as the first beverage of the day. Drink water first, right?
Absolutely. So we want you to hydrate before you caffeinate. Okay. And there's multiple reasons why. The biggest one is people don't realize it, but sleep in and of itself is a dehydrative event. You lose almost a full liter of water. That's like, let me see, is this? Oh, yeah, this is 1.5 liters. Okay, so this is basically, you would lose about this much water from here down every single night. And that's actually in the humidity in your breath. So then drinking caffeine, remember, caffeine's a diuretic. It just makes you have to pee. So basically, if you have, and by the way, if you had a couple of alcoholic beverages the night before, that's going to be a diuretic and dehydrate. You're going to turn into a raisin by the time you know what I'm saying, in the morning, if you just, if you don't watch out. So I'm always telling, hydrate before you caffeinate. In fact, one of my goals every single day is to drink a 12 to 15 ounce bottle of water before I even brush my teeth. Because it gets it out of the way. Because here's the other problem is, a lot of people, they say, oh shit, I forgot to hydrate. And so at 8 o'clock at night, they're pounding one of these. Well, guess what? You're going to be waking up peeing all night long, which is going to be very disruptive to your sleep. So you really want to start thinking about sort of what you're putting in your body from the beginning to the end, because it makes it for much more successful when you're unconscious, for sure.
Awesome. All right. We have Dr. Breus here for till 12. So please ask your questions. Feel free, raise your digital hand or just sound off.
This is Dave Wise. I have a question, and
Sure.
I obviously have some sleep problems, but I've done away with caffeine.
Right.
My biggest problem is I can't fall asleep unless I'm watching TV, which I know is bad, but what would you recommend?
So I want to challenge your thought right there. I don't think TV is bad. Okay.
Okay.
So let me tell you a story. So I met this girl, and she became my girlfriend, and then eventually she became my wife. And you make allowances for your partner as you stay married and things of that nature. And when we were dating, she would fall asleep. She had 2 dogs. Big screen TV, dogs in the bed, big screen TV on, fell asleep like this every night, TV on all night long. And so I said, hey, I'm going to be a sleep doctor. I can fix that. How many of you have ever tried to fix something with your bed partner? Just by a raise of, well, raise your digital. You don't have to. You understand what I'm talking about here. It's never an easy process. So I actually pulled the TV out of the bedroom. And she said, Michael, if you'd ever like to come back in the bedroom again, you better put the TV back in. So I promptly put the TV back in, and I decided to study her. Now, this happens in my house quite often. I study my children, I study my dogs, I study my wife to learn more about their sleep. And so what I discovered, David, was that she wasn't even watching the TV. She was listening to it. So she gets monkey mind. Now, I don't know if you get this as well, but it's like right when you lay down and you turn off the light, it's like all this stress seems to come in. Right. And it's, did I say this right? Did I pick up the groceries? Did I, and all of these things come in. And so for her, it's just enough of a distraction for her to be able to throw on an old episode of Seinfeld. Now, I want to be clear, like, don't watch like CNN or Fox News or anything like that that's got all this terrible stuff on it, because you will hear it at night and that will kind of wake you up in a more negative state. So what I would say is, I don't think I care if you watch TV to go to bed. In fact, if it helps you, as long as it's not disrupting your bed partner, I think it's okay.
Okay, so let me explain just a little bit more. I have a tablet with an arm, so it's just me. Then it shuts off after 30 minutes.
I love it. That sounds great. I'm going to stay at your house, bro. That sounds better.
All right. So then I heard that the light, like you had mentioned, you see the sunlight and your timer goes off. Is that the same light?
So great question. So it is the same light, but I'm going to be honest with you. People are making much more to do about blue light than is really a function of how it affects your sleep. So does blue light affect your ability to produce melatonin? Yes, it does. I will tell you that. However, it has a lot to do with how much exposure to blue light you had during the daytime. There's several other factors. So if you really want to be at your best, most optimal sleep, then go out and buy some blue light blocking glasses that you can use while you're watching the TV, and then you should be just fine, because as you close your eyes, you just throw them off on the side and then you fall asleep. And I mean, literally $20, $30 at max for some decent blue light blocking glasses. If you go to my website, if you go to thesleepdoctor.com, I actually teach you all the things to look for in blue light blocking glasses. Just type in blue light blocking glasses and you should be good.
Okay. Sorry for dominating. The tablet
That's a
actually
good
blocks
question.
the blue light itself. But when I wake up in the middle of the night, I turn it on and I got another 30 minutes and I go to sleep. That's good?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. On to the next. Mike, you had a question?
Well, it's just a comment more than a question. So, Dr. Breus, when you spoke to one of our groups prior, you had made mention for somebody who has disrupted sleep to try banana tea. And I certainly have my challenges with sleep, whole different topic. But I started banana tea, and I tell you, it works beautifully for me. Now, it didn't didn't work the first time. It took a couple doses, but when it gets going, it works great. Works great.
So that's awesome. So let me tell is it okay if I share with everybody?
Yeah, please.
So what Michael's talking about is the last time I was here, Ian was nice enough to invite me previously. I talked about this thing called banana tea, and I don't know if everybody here was in attendance at that one, but this is a great way to get your magnesium. So we know that over 50% of the population is magnesium deficient, and we know that that number jumps to almost 75% when you get into people who are age 60 and up. So we really want these people to have some level of magnesium supplementation, but sometimes if you have too much magnesium, it gives you diarrhea, it gives you an upset stomach. There's lots of pills and powders and crap like that out there. If you were looking for a natural way to supplement your magnesium, bananas are loaded with magnesium, but the peel turns out to have 3 times the amount of magnesium as the fruit itself. So what I do is I get an organic banana and I wash off the outside, cut off the tip and the stem, cut it in half, leave the peel on it and the fruit in it, drop the 2 halves into some boiling water. So far, all I've asked you to do is wash off a banana and boil it. Okay. Then it's like 3 cups of water, 4 cups of water, and then you drink the water. As my daughter likes to say, Dad, it's very banana-y. So you really have to like the flavor of banana, but it's really wonderful. And I have one mom, and she makes it at the beginning of the week, and she pours it into popsicle molds, and she gives it to her kids, and it works like a charm, puts them right out.
It's great.
I'm glad you liked it. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate it.
Hey, can I ask a question, Eric?
Hey, Eric.
Yeah, great topic. And I've been struggling with sleep for many reasons for many years. What is your thoughts? Because I know what my doctor's thoughts are. What are your thoughts on THC for sleep? Not
so
for
I'm a fan.
Not for getting rid of the kids for a day or any of those other things, but literally to help sleep.
So I'm a fan of THC and CBD and cannabis in general. I've probably written more on cannabis and sleep than any other doctor in the United States. So you definitely tapped in on an area of expertise for me. So let me explain a few things for folks out there who may or may not have an interest, just want to learn more about cannabis in general. So cannabis is made up of several different constituents. The thing that makes you feel high is THC, or Delta 9 THC. There's actually now marketing of something called Delta 8 THC, which also makes you feel a little wonky, but don't worry about that. You want to stay away from that at all costs. THC in and of itself elevates heart rate and lowers REM sleep. So most sleep doctors are like, no, you can't have any THC. I disagree, and I'm going to explain why. Because of that dolphin chronotype that I mentioned earlier, and people who have a little bit more anxiety, those people generally have insomnia and have difficulty not only falling asleep, but maintaining sleep. THC at low levels does a great job of just taking the edge off of the anxiety for my patients. And so it's very rare that I'm going to recommend cannabis without THC. Now, if somebody just has a moral obligation to THC or religious or whatever, I can show them how to do this without THC. But I will tell you, I think a little bit of THC is going to be important. There are 2 constituents out there that are marketed, one that has real research and one that has none. So CBD, as in dog, has no research whatsoever to show that it actually helps with sleep. CBD helps with inflammation and pain, or helps with anxiety. If you are not sleeping because of pain, inflammation, or anxiety, CBD is going to help you sleep, but it's not helping you sleep. It's helping lower your pain and anxiety and allowing the natural sleep process to help you with your sleep. CBN, as in nighttime, that is the constituent that we've got plenty of research out of Israel to show that it absolutely positively helps with sleep. So when you're looking at the ratio on the product, what you're going to look at is you would see a 1, then maybe a 3 for CBD and a 3 for CBN. So it's THC 1 and then 3 might be a good ratio type of thing, or 1 2 might be a good ratio. The thing is, you have to play around with it, and it also is going to depend quite a bit on your historical use of cannabis, because if you're like a virgin to cannabis, I'd start you in one particular area. Whereas if you're, a daily user, then I'd start you different if it's just at night. So there's a little bit more to kind of get into there. But Ian's got my information, and I'll put my my email here in the chat for folks. So if people wanted to actually see me as a client or have some more questions, my email is drbreus@gmail.com. You can reach out, and I'm happy to help you out. But I'm a fan of cannabis, but you have to be careful with the amount of THC.
What about specifically the long-term effects? That's what my doctor was concerned about, right? The memory. And my argument to him was, look, 3 hours of sleep, my memory is a lot worse than anything else. So I'd rather get the sleep than not get the sleep. So that's my argument. I just told him, until you can find something better, like, this is the route I'm taking.
Yeah, and once again, I don't think I have a problem, but let's be clear. There's a difference between using cannabis medicinally and getting stoned and going to bed, right?
Yeah, right.
So it has to do with amount, and it has to do with concentration of THC and things of that nature. But as an example, also, I want to be super clear. As a doctor, it's very hard for me to get behind vaping and actual smoking. I'm fine with edibles and tinctures, like droppers that have liquid that you can put under your tongue, which is actually my favorite route to use cannabis. So as an example, my wife has used cannabis to help her sleep at times. My favorite product right now is called Drift Away Drops. It's made by a company called Yummy Karma, and they have melatonin, chamomile, they have CBN, they have THC, and it's a really good formula, and I've had a lot of success. I should say a lot, maybe 5 or 6 patients I've tried on it, and they've all done reasonably
Run that by
well.
me again, just so I write it down. What'd you call it?
It's called Drift Away Drops, and it's by a company called Yummy Karma. So if you're in Los Angeles, if you go to an app called Weed Maps, and type in the product, then if you type in Drift Away Drops, it'll tell you locally where you could probably get it delivered to your house.
Yeah. All right. No, I really appreciate it, because there's just so much controversy. And like melatonin, like what you were saying, actually, melatonin actually does work for me, and it gets me to sleep. But then an hour later, I am totally awake.
You're up.
Right. And so we have to be,
the problem.
yeah, and we have to be really careful with overuse of melatonin, because here's the thing. Melatonin's a hormone. Right. And cannabis is not. Cannabis, we know how long it stays in your system. We have a pretty good idea of what it does. I mean, for the most part, to be fair, there's a couple hundred chemicals in cannabis that when you ignite it, they change composition. And so we don't know what happens. Again, one of the reasons why I like the non-vape option and the tinctures and the gummies as being better. But I always tell people the same thing, which is, if you're going to do this, start low and slow. So that means if you get a 5 milligram gummy, cut it in half, okay, and try it. And that's the only one you do that night. And if you don't get an effect after 45 minutes to an hour, don't take another one. Then the next night, try a full gummy, because what ends up happening is people get over potted, right? And they take a gummy, it hasn't hit them, then they take a second, and then the first one starts to hit, and now they're too high. They're stoned, not going to sleep. Now, for anybody out there who's concerned, there is a very simple way to counteract this situation, and that is with pure CBD. So what I talk about with a lot of my newbies who are obviously not you, Eric, you clearly have some level of experience.
Hey, don't tell everybody on the call about all that.
I think you did, bro. It wasn't me. I'm pretty sure you told them, right?
All of a sudden we hang up and HR is calling me, hey.
That's right. We're
no. This is all hypothetical. This is all
as it's being recorded.
Right. But understanding, like, start low and then slowly build your way up. But if you use CBD, if you're too high and pure CBD, it immediately brings you down. So what I have a lot of my patients do is buy a CBD only vape. And the reason I use a vape is because it gets up and in very, very quickly. So it's really used as a fire extinguisher, right? Is if you got too high, now take a couple of hits on this vape, and I can tell you within 45 seconds to a minute and a
That's
half.
a good tip that I was not aware of, because one thing it does is THC definitely makes, like, I have propensity for motion sickness, and it
Yes.
makes it so much worse.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but I will tell
Absolutely.
people on the call, I mean, it was life changing for me because I really went from 3 hours.
Yeah.
I easily do 8 hours now without a problem, and I don't get up to go to the bathroom anymore either. I used to get up
Right.
like 2, 3 times sometimes to go to the restroom, and
Right.
that kills your sleep.
It
So
does.
if people are struggling, I think it's a worthy option, in my opinion.
And I do as well, Eric, but one word of caution for folks out there is you need to make sure that the cannabis is not going to interact with any potential medications
Yep.
or supplementation that you may currently be taking. And if you're in a state where it is recreationally or medicinally legal, you really should tell your doctor that
Yes.
you're using it. Because like as an example, so I'll use an extreme example in an opposite case, is I work with a lot of rock and rollers, right? And so when I walk into a meeting with some of these guys and gals, my first question is, how much coke did you do before the show? Right? And everybody's like, oh, Dr. Breus, we don't do that. And I'm like, look, like, if you think I'm stupid, I'm not, okay? Right? And so either we're going to have a real conversation and I'm going to know what's going on so I can treat you appropriately, or you can just pay my fee and I'm going to walk out the door. And everybody says, oh, okay. And then they tell me the truth. So your doctor really needs to know if you're utilizing cannabis. Even if you just do it one night a week, it's important for them to know that and the method that you're using it. Don't worry, they're not going to shame you. And if they do, maybe you're not with the right doctor.
Doctor,
Right?
I got a question.
Sure.
I definitely I'm pretty much a wolf chronotype.
Me too.
Yeah, and it's easy to stay up and even work into the night.
Yep.
But when I have an early meeting or even like an early anything like
Brutal, isn't it? It's brutal.
I can't turn it off, right? And so then your anxiety about getting up early keeps you up till 4 a.m.
That's
What do you recommend?
Yep. So I know this because I'm a wolf as well, or at least I was until I hit about 55, and then things kind of changed a little for me hormonally. But you look a lot younger than 55, so I'm thinking
44.
Oh, wow, you look great for 44, dude. I wish I looked that good. Here's what I would do is plan on the day where you have to be up early. Give yourself a 20-minute place for a nap. Here's what it does is it lowers your anxiety the night before because you're like, fuck it. If I don't sleep well, I know I've got a nap, so I'll be able to be okay, which lowers that anxiety. And then schedule the nap. Actually put it on your schedule. And if it has to go during lunch, then it has to go during lunch. I don't know, where you work or how your boss is, but and really do it. Like, don't just put it on your schedule. Like, go into a room, close the door, make it quiet, right? Put in some earplugs. Let people know where you're going, by the way, from a safety perspective. For anybody out there who's going to take a nap during the daytime, always, always, always have a napping buddy or somebody who knows where you are. Especially, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but especially for females, because you're alone by yourself type of thing. I just don't want anybody to get hurt. A lot of people will go out to their car and take a nap. Again, let somebody know or have somebody in the car who's playing on their phone while you're napping. Fine. But again, schedule a nap for yourself in there. It lowers your anxiety the night before, and it helps with that kind of escape hatch of sleep relief, because you're not going to sleep well the night before, because that's just life, because you're nervous about things, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like you should expect it. Like, honestly, if you get any sleep the night before, you should be like, hell yes, my body's doing okay.
Right. And I've also seen, I don't know if you're familiar with Brian Johnson. I've seen he using some kind of vagus nerve stimulating device. Any comments on that?
I do. I have a lot of comments on that. So Brian's dangerous. That's my first comment. Okay. So he doesn't know what he's doing. He's here in California. And by the way, I was at a party with him, and he's a weirdo. Okay. I'm just going to tell you, he is an odd bird. And what he's doing to himself is arguably the extreme for almost everything. And he's trying to do something that's kind of weird, because there's a lot of people in the longevity space that are like, I want to live forever. He's not trying to do that. He's trying to go backwards. Right. He's literally trying to go backwards. And so one thing you want to think about is, like, what's your motivation for that? right? Like, why do you want to do something like that? Where is that going? And then again, using the extremes doesn't make intuitive sense. Now, talking about the vagus nerve stimulator, there are some interesting things out there that can be helpful. I don't know exactly which video you're talking about because I haven't watched most of his, but what I can tell you is there is a device that does some interesting vagal stimulation that can be helpful for helping people fall asleep. And that's been out there for a little bit of time. But if you're having struggles with falling asleep or staying asleep, I'd rather put you through my paces and find out what your deficiencies are and fix those, what your chronotype is, get you in schedule, and then you're no longer dependent on the device potentially. I've got you really understanding your personal sleep. And I would argue that's a skill set you can use for life.
Okay, thank you.
We are at the top of the hour, so thank you, Dr. Breus, for your time, and looking forward to receiving the slides through Ian.
Absolutely. So Ian, I'll shoot me an email, and then Becky will send you the slides, and then everybody, and there are more slides that I didn't go through that'll be attached here, so you'll get to see some other fun stuff as well. Or that just means I have to come back.
There you go. I was gonna say, always enjoy your presence, Dr. Breus. Hopefully, sometime first quarter of next year, we can invite you back around March. Before you hit your 100 interviews.
Yeah, well, so March is going to be a good time because that's hopefully the last time we're going to do daylight savings. Is supposedly going to be this March. And so there's lots of sleep related things surrounding that. So catch me early before that, because I'm usually in New York doing TV.
Good Morning America.
And the Today Show and Mark and Kelly and all that other insanity. So but I'd love to come back. I love the opportunity to educate such a thoughtful group of people, and also just want to make a shout out to Ian. Ian and I are in a men's group together that we both really enjoy, and that's how we met. And it's nice to have a place where men can get together and talk and share and things like that. So Ian's one of my brothers. That's how we ended up meeting and have become as close as we are. So just wanted to let everybody know the context of that.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, with everyone. That, happy holidays, folks, and we'll see you 2024.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. And feel free to email me if you've got a question that didn't get answered. Fire off an email. Look, I'm done mostly for the holidays, so it's not like I've got a lot to do. I'm happy to answer a couple of emails here and there, and maybe we can get you to sleep better.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dr.
Bye, guys.
Bye.